Hey, how's it going? My name is Chad Boblet, and this is Hauling Success, Insights from Rate Per Mile Masters. Rate Per Mile Masters is a Facebook group. I'll be talking about that, and what the subjects that come up in my group that we talk about the most is what I'm going to hit on. I'm not a speech giver. This is a pro talks session. You all are the pros, and we have a conversation, basically how this goes. You'll know after I get started that I'm not a speaker, but I am a good talker, and I like talking to people. That's why I started a Facebook group called Rate Per Mile Masters. We'll go to the next slide here. All right, a little bit. I'll put these slides together. Nothing's professional about these slides, just something for you to read and for me to take notes too. So don't critique me on that if you don't mind. But just a little bit about myself here. My name is Chad Boblet, Rate Per Mile Masters creator and owner of Boblet Brothers. Rate Per Mile Masters is, again, the Facebook group that I started. Boblet Brothers is a carrier. It's the name of my company, me, myself, my truck, and I. That's all there is. So I'm not no big company. I'm just me, myself, my truck, and I. As a former Marine, I spent 4 years as a company driver before becoming an owner-operator carrier. Those 4 years was with, first year, when I got out of the Marines, was with... First year was with TMC, flatbed company. Any TMC drivers here? Before? No? Do y'all know who they are? Any flatbed drivers? No flatbed drivers. Okay. Well, we got a few flatbed drivers. That's hard work. That's hard work, and I've always thought about going back to flatbed. That's kind of where my roots are. How I began in trucking. But the reason why I haven't is because flatbed is hard work, and I'm kind of a lazy truck driver. I don't want to work that hard, but flatbed is good work. It's fine. And the other company was McLean. Any McLean drivers? No prior McLean drivers? Okay. Well, have you also? You're familiar with who McLean is? Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, I'd spent 3 years at McLean. McLean. The reason why I asked that question, if you're familiar with McLean, is because if you run the spot market. Ever since I've been running the spot market, I've always looked back at McLean like, what if, let's say McLean went on strike, and those drivers went on strike, because they always talked about doing that when I was working with them, and those loads got put out to brokers. What would I quote one of those loads from a broker that I used to do regularly, 3 times a week at McLean, which is those runs consisted of about average of 19 stops. It was a completely handoff load on a hand truck. You had a freezer side, a refrigerating side, going up and down the ramp, and delivering at these 20 different stops. You're in a big 53-foot trailer, semi-truck with a sleeper. You're going into mom-and-pop gas stations, and you're delivering cigarettes, Gatorade, washer fluid, all that stuff on a hand truck. The entire trailer is loaded from the top to the bottom, and hand loading and taking that into the store and hand loading it and dropping it off. And 19, 20 stops per day. So anyway, if you run the spot market and you know how to, and you're thinking about how would you quote that if a broker was to tell me, we got this one load, I would be north of 4,000, and I think I could probably get that on some of those runs. And we're talking about something like from Lexington, Kentucky to Cincinnati or Cleveland, Ohio. So it's really not that far, but all the work and how hard it is getting into some of those stops. But anyway, that's not part of this speech. I just like talking about it because it was hard work. And finally, by doing that job for 3 years, and very labor intensive, that job, I ended up having to have knee surgery, neck surgery, all at the same time. It put me out of work. I had to do short-term disability. And short-term disability, this will get into how getting started as a carrier. And I'll make this fast because I know a lot of y'all have heard this story, but I like telling it, and that's kind of why I started the Facebook group. Getting hurt was a blessing in disguise. Getting hurt at McLean and being on short-term disability. It was painful at the beginning because I had to send my wife and my kids to live with my in-laws. I couldn't, and I had to put my house up for sale. I lost my house. I did get my kids back and my wife back. So if I forget to tell that part of it, it ends well. So I got them back, and but for that time frame, I had to put my house up for sale, and I was living in a motel in Lexington, Kentucky. It's where I live at, and that hotel pops up or motel, that motel pops up in the news all the time about getting robbed. And I'm like, yeah, I used to stay there. I used to live there and pay you would pay per week. You know, I didn't have no money, and the short-term disability wasn't that much money. But anyway, and every day my routine at that time would go to physical therapy and get to be able to walk again and my neck and stuff. But so as I did that, I think that was about 8 or 9 months that I had to do that for, and I got terminated from McLean because I couldn't go back to work with them, and it was time for me to go to work somewhere. I did not want to go and do the grind of working with one of the big carriers. I couldn't do flatbed. I still wasn't recovered enough to do flatbed. I knew how to do flatbed. I couldn't do McLean, and what was left, I have a CDL, I have a good name, I have good credit. I could go work for J.B. Hunt. You know, Snyder, one of the big ones. If you have a CDL, good record, all of them will hire you. We know that. But I didn't see motivation in collecting miles and getting paid a job like that where you get paid per mile. And I know there's no ending to that. There's no future to that, no goal in that. So I came up with a plan. My plan was I've always wanted to be an owner-operator. At this point, I have nothing to lose. The only reason why I never became an owner-operator before is because I was feared I would lose my wife, I would lose my kids, I'd lose the health insurance that the big companies give you. So I started looking into how am I going to buy a truck. You know, nobody would have a good name, have good credit. But if you've never owned a truck before, nobody's going to give you a loan to buy a truck. But I was going to figure out a way to do this. And the way I figured it out was I would get these credit card offers in the mail that says 0% interest for 12 months. And I'm like, what? So the biggest thing that could happen to me is I ruin my credit if I go buy a truck with these credit cards. And that's what I went and did. I applied for a bunch of credit cards, got them in the mail, and I went in Lexington, Kentucky, same dealership, the same dealer that works there, because I called that same shop, and the guy still works there. They remember me. I asked them a ton of questions about this truck, and my last question was, okay, I want to buy it, and here's my 4 credit cards, and I bought my first truck. And I got it paid off really quick at 0% interest. That's how I got started. But anyway, what led to getting my authority, I want to tell this part of it too, was so I didn't have this planned out. I really didn't even understand what getting your authority actually was. Like that was a process. That was something you needed to do. And but I did look at, okay, well, who's everybody leasing on to? Because that's the next thing. Well, everybody leases on to Landstar. And, excuse me, take a drink. Everybody leases on to Landstar. I mean, most people, not everybody, but I mean, that's the way I was interpreting it in my head. And Landstar has that magic number of 35% that the company's going to take. And I came across an ad. It was a DAT load board. At that time, it was Get Loaded, but it's owned by DAT. The Get Loaded is gone. Now it's DAT. But the ad talked about the $35, and you get the access to this load board. And access to this load board means you get to work with any broker you want, all brokers, and it only costs you $35, and you get 100% of the money. So I'm comparing this to Landstar. I'm like, well, why does anybody lease on to Landstar? Landstar is a good company. I'm not going to say it's a good company. I'm not knocking it in any way. If you're with Landstar, you're probably with a great company. Usually people that are with Landstar, they stay with them. But there, at the beginning, for me to make that decision, I'm looking at, okay, $35 versus leasing the Landstar, and they're going to take 35%. Well, it just makes sense to get your authority. And but still, I didn't understand the process. And at that time, I asked Get Loaded, DAT. I said, okay, well, how do I get my authority? And they said, we do that. And then my next question was, well, do you take credit cards? They said yes, and there we go. And 3 weeks, I was a trucking company, right? And that's how I got started. That's how I got started, and that was 13 years ago, all right? So we'll go on here. 10 years ago this month, I established the Rate Per Mile Masters Facebook group. This year is our 10th year anniversary. I think it was March the 3rd or 4th that I started it. A little bit of history of that is, so getting my authority, you know how like a big, to make it short, is the starting of the Facebook group, Rate Per Mile Masters, you know how everybody says, say no to cheap freight, say no to cheap freight. Well, my thinking behind say no to cheap freight is I'll teach people to make sure they don't take cheap freight. That was my thing is if I can get everybody on the same page and get them to understand, then nobody will take cheap freight. It's not like Chad's going to be a nice guy and help everybody out. No, I'm doing this for myself. I want everybody that joins my community and listens to what these guys are talking about to prevent them from being scammed, fraud, and to get better rates. So that was the thing behind starting the Facebook group Rate Per Mile Masters. And y'all know who Kevin Rutherford is? Okay, he was a big part of listening to him. I used to listen to him on the XM radio all the time. And XM radio, Kevin was really well known at that time for teaching MPG, mile per gallon, how to get better mile per gallon. He talked about it all the time, and it's a best way how to save money. And most of his people, I think, got the feeling that he's talking to most of the people that are leased onto a company. So these guys that are leased onto a company, they're getting paid $1 plus fuel surcharge. So the only way for them to make more money is to save on that fuel. So it totally makes sense. But where I have my authority and I'm working with brokers, I keep on thinking to myself, instead of buying this and doing these modifications to your truck to save on fuel, why not just ask the broker for an extra 3 cents per mile? It just seemed like an easier thing to do. So that's how I came about starting the group Rate Per Mile Masters 10 years ago this month, which has now grown to an impressive 36,000 members. The primary objective of this group is to foster strong business relationships with carriers and brokers. There's probably no other place online that I know of that's going to have more brokers in that professional type of conversation happening with brokers and carriers. And the great thing about that is you learn a lot from brokers. I used to do a podcast with Kevin Rutherford, a part of his network that was called Brokers and Beyond. Anybody remember that? Okay, few. All right. I used to do that podcast on his program, Brokers and Beyond, and my thing was that to bring brokers on it and talk to everyone, the secrets of working with the brokerage side of it, and the good thing about that is when we would talk to these brokers, open them up and get them to give the tips to the carriers that would listen into this, is that these guys now would start contacting that broker. The broker would have all kinds of carriers now that wanted to work with them, and that led to different brokers calling me asking if they could be on the show, which was a lot of fun. I enjoyed doing it. We share vital information about market supply and demand. Supply and demand, that's one of the things I talk about a lot, and I pay attention to as far as that's your key thing in getting better rates. Utilize various tools to secure better rates over time. The group has established itself as a trusted destination and network, a viable industry insights. Our reliability and integrity are well known and highly regarded in the industry. Over 10 years, I could probably put some credit there saying that what other group has been around this long with this much success and stuck with it? Well, it means that we just hit 10 years. I don't think no other forum, no other platform has that longevity. And when I say integrity and trust it, one of the things that we do that has probably given us such a great name is helping guys that need to get paid from a broker. One success story that first comes to my head was a guy that he was asking a bunch of questions to the members about how to get paid. It was a produce load. And all the members, what I love seeing is the members were telling him, okay, do this, do this, do this, and he was doing all these things, but he still was having such a hard time getting paid from this broker. And because this group is so well known, I got involved and I asked the guy to give me. I said, ask for some details. I got him on the phone. He spoke broken English, and not that matters, but it just seems like sometimes those are the ones that maybe they have a communication problem with the broker and they have those issues. So once I got to talking to the guy and I figured out what's going on, who the broker is, his next comment, I wish I saved it, and it's somewhere in the group now if we were to dig for it. But his next comment was, Chad, I don't know what you said to that broker, but I just got a comm check for $3,000. So, and I really didn't say much, but other than my name is Chad Bobbitt, I'm in this Facebook group. He's odd, and the broker says, I know the Facebook group, I know who you are. We got behind. We're going to get that. We're going to take care of the guy. $3,000. That was unexpected. That was big money to that guy, right? And I can tell stories like that over and over and over how we've helped out guys like that. And it's not who I am. It's not my voice. It's collectively the voice that we have in that group and how it's represented. I need to move on here. If I forget this, y'all let me know. And if you have questions, raise your hand. I want this year. I've been doing this maybe 3 or 4 years. I mean, I've lost count, but I want this year to answer questions. So if you have something, raise your hand. If I don't see you, stand up. These lights are pretty bright. Okay, next slide is what's next for owner-operators, carriers? How low will rates, these are the things I'm going to cover if I make it through it, all of it. But how low will rates go? Surviving the spot market with low demand, getting your authority. Real quick on that one. How many have your authority? Awesome. Okay, so you have your authority. You know what it's like working with brokers. Anybody thinking about getting their authority? Okay, we got a few. Then, hey, this is for you. And if I don't address your questions, definitely join my group because that's what I talk about that all the time. I love talking about it. And the reason why I like talking about it is because there's so much more money when you're working for yourself than working for someone else. And I'm a prime example of that. One of the first loads I did, going back to the McLean days, and finally getting my authority, and one of the first loads I did, it paid like $1,200, and it was just so easy to negotiate that with the broker. I remember that first conversation, talking to these brokers, and the first thing the broker would say every time I would call them is, what's your MC number? What's your MC number? And the funny thing was, the third broker that said, what's your MC number? I said, you brokers like asking what that number is. And I'm going to have to memorize this number because I kept on flipping through my binder to see what the MC number is. I'm like, every one of these brokers keep asking that, so that must be an important number. And I didn't even know what it was. Again, I was new to having my authority. And that broker laughed and gave me the load. I think it was like $1,200. Came out to like $2 per mile. I did it, and after you're working so hard for one of these companies where, like McLean, where you're offloading the truck and pulling into these hard places, when I got paid for that first load, I was like, man, it's on. This is a lot of money, and I only did it in one day, you know? And McLean, I would have had to work all week offloading trailers and going to 20 stops per day. And here I just made the same money. I just drove down the road. Couldn't believe it. This is on, you know. And that was my exciting moment of having my authority. If you're thinking about getting it, please talk to me, man. I love telling those stories. Okay, working with brokers. I'll hit on that. Power only. I love talking about power only as well. If I don't hit on everything here, make sure you join the group and talk to me about power only. Companies I work with and questions and answers. All right, getting on to the next one. How low, these are things that are popping up right here recently that, well, how low will rates go? People's been talking about that this whole year, maybe too, right? As long as fuel remains the same, rates will stay the same. And the point that I want to hit on this is, the last thing on here says, this is an election year, okay? One of my first speeches was with DAT. The first DATCon, I was the opening speaker for DAT in Portland, and that was a speech mostly to a lot of brokers, and maybe carriers that are carriers and brokers. But I remember one of the slides that came up. This was many years ago. Bachman, his last name is Bachman. I might get his first name wrong, but his last name is Bachman. He's on CNBC all the time talking about rates and stuff, trucking, and his slide said, you can't kill an owner-operator with cheap fuel. I loved it. I'm like, this is what's being told to brokers. You can't, and see, brokers, what the meaning was with that was brokers, they want rates to be up too. They get a percentage of what loads pay. And at that time, brokers were asking, when are rates going to go back up? When are rates going to go back up? And at that time, fuel was about as low as it was ever. And when fuel's really low like that, the owner-operator can make a lot of mistakes and survive and survive. You're not going to kick them out. They will keep on ticking and keep on going because the fuel's not kicking them out. Now, if we reverse that and fuel goes up, guess what? We're going to thin out a lot of carriers real fast. When you get offloaded, you're not going to run 20 miles to the truck stop and get a hot meal, hot shower, find a place to park. When fuel is really high, you're going to stay put. As soon as you get offloaded, you're going to find somewhere out of sight, out of mind, and hope they don't run you off. Because every mile counts. You know, if you go 7 miles down the road, that's a gallon of fuel. And those things really start adding up. And people that make mistakes, they can't recover from it when fuel goes up. With the election year, I don't predict fuel prices and what's going to happen with that, but, you know, do with what you want with it. If Trump becomes elected again, then was fuel high when he was elected, when he was in office before, or was it cheap? It was actually cheap. So it could prolong keeping carriers from going out of business. My thinking, you know, but I don't predict fuel. It's just something to think about. Okay. The spot market has hit the bottom. I firmly believe that the spot market, and again, I don't like doing the predictions, but I firmly believe it's hit the bottom because I talked to so many people about like C.H. Robinson. I talked to high-level people at C.H. Robinson that tells me that they know the spot. One, that they know that this is as low as the spot market to go. Once here. I circled these four numbers for a reason. There was a report that I read about that in order for an owner-operator to break even, an owner-operator carrier to break even, they need to be at 207 per mile. And that number is important. And there's a whole lot of different ways that you can average that in. My insurance is really cheap. If you go to Florida, and Natalia will tell you this, if I lived in Florida, my insurance, if the same person, if I lived in Florida, my insurance would be a whole lot, Natalia. Did I say Natalia? I said, okay, it's Natalia. I'll get it right. But if you go to Florida, those people in Florida, they pay a whole lot higher insurance than someone in Kentucky. It's an average number, okay? And that number, I don't like getting into debate about that average number, but that number was 207 per mile. If you're making less, according to the study, was that if you're making less than that, then you're not breaking even. So, well, and if you watch this, I've been studying the DAT trend lines. That's where this image comes from, and it's for van. A lot of my talking will be about van, because that's the subject that I know the best. But if you pay attention to these the DAT trend lines, the trend line for the national average will never tend to go much less than what it takes to break even. That's just the way it's always been. And it'll stay, and this is about as low as it will probably go. Will it go lower? We might have a week, might have some periods where it might dip below that, but it's not going to go much lower. So I strongly feel this is the bottom of it. The other thing is the 2024 contract bids are being pushed lower. So what I mean by this is a good thing, and I put in the marks in there. This is a good thing for the spot market. Anybody you talk to about the spot market right now, they're not telling you people that bid on contract runs, like the big mega carriers, the mega brokers, are they bidding higher for 2024? Are they putting in bids to higher than they were before? No, I haven't talked to anyone that said that they're bidding higher. They're all saying they're bidding lower. And when this happens, because they need those backhauls, so they are going to bid lower. When this happens, they can only go so low, and they're not going to be able to push it onto the spot market. Guys are only going to go so low. It's just like it becomes too cheap. There's only so many backhauls out there, and then whenever people start realizing, hey, I'm not making no money at this, it sits on the load board, and the longer it sits, the more days it sits, the higher the price is going to go. So this is a good thing. Don't think of it as a bad thing. No, I love it when carriers and brokers say, yeah, we're really having to bid low this year for 2024. That is a good thing. Yes, because that means we're going to get a lot more freight on the spot market that's going to hit the load boards. DAT is the one that I use for van. I'll go to the next one. This one here is fun to look at. Sorry, my breathing in this mic. It's here. Again, that was an election year. That was the last note on that. Okay. Just came across this last week. I've seen this graph before. I think it's important. Interstate Motor Carrier Authority, the green, new entries, and the red is departures. The black is like, okay, divide the one by the other, and this is where we're at. That's a long period of time of, there's never been, since 2014, there's never been a period where that black line has been, we've been in the negative for this period of time, for this long of a period of time, of people exiting. But it was followed by, the black line going straight up in 2020 after COVID and the big spike we've seen in rates. That was a lot of false hope. That is, and will we ever see another event where rates will go that high in the spot market? That's a once in a lifetime event. I guess I can say on here it's COVID-19 without getting shadow banned. But if I say it on social media, I can't say that word. So if you're putting this on YouTube, you might want to cut that part out. But anyway, you know what I'm saying. That's a once. Will that ever happen again? Who knows? Probably not. But that's the reason why we've seen rates so high. Back in that time frame, you could be Pee Wee Herman and fall out of the truck and get $3 per mile. It didn't matter who you were. You could get $3 per mile that easy. And it was a glorious time during that time. And that's the reason why the green, it goes so high into the green of new entries. And now those people couldn't make it during that time. I feel sorry for them because they thought that it was going to last forever. They bought trucks at very high prices, trailers at very high prices. And to be able to maintain, you didn't have to use no skill at all. That's the stuff that I'm going to talk about here in order to get really good rates. That's a fun chart. Anybody have any questions about this chart? I love talking about this chart. It just tells us what's going happening, and we're getting back to that even line, back to where it's equal. The same number of leaving and the same number coming in. That tells us things are not that far off from becoming normal again. Normal will not be COVID. Will not be what we've seen right after COVID. We'll never be like that again. And don't think like that. That's not the way the spot market operates. Surviving the spot market with low demand. First thing, power only. Does anybody here do power only loads? Okay, power only is my secret niche. I'm sharing it with you now because it's no longer a secret. Power only. It'll be the one thing, if demand does pick up, and we will see demand pick up a little bit. I don't know how much, it's a prediction, but we know right after MATS. Always happens every single year. Y'all can challenge me to this, and you'll see shortly after this event, MATS, rates start to pick up. This is what I love about MATS. The other thing that's really great about MATS is like, we're done with winter. This will be the last week it's cold here in Kentucky. I live in Lexington. And the weather starts to become better again. The flowers, the seasonal type of loads, mulch hitting the loads, all those seasonal type loads start happening, and that will help bring some demand back. The power only, what's great about power only loads is that where so many of these companies did hiring freezes, where they stopped hiring, they're hiring, but they're being very picky about who they hire. As that demand picks up, they are short on drivers, and it takes them a while to be able to put drivers, these big mega carriers, to find enough drivers for all the loads they have. But they're going to have loaded trailers. Someone was telling me earlier about how because of COVID, that even increased the number of power only even higher. Everybody wants to do the preloaded trailers. ELD pushed the preloaded trailers. So the mega carriers, a lot of the mega carriers will have 2 to 3. I think Knight Swift told me they had five trailers for every one truck. So these loaded trailers are getting pushed to the spot market. So if you're not doing power only, it's a great time to start looking at it. Talk to your insurance. It's to add it onto your insurance. It's not that big of a deal. I'll put it on my insurance. It wasn't that much at all. Amazon probably, if you do power only for Amazon, they require a little bit more than anybody else. Another little tip about the power only with your insurance. And talk to your insurance. I don't give insurance advice, but I found this out because I did a Kentucky trailer right here. It's built right here in Louisville. Those moving trailers. I did one of those trailers, and I called my insurance about it, and they said that the trailer itself was the cargo. Another tip there for power only. But I'll probably talk about more power only, but I'm going to move on here and make sure I don't run out of time. Multiple trailers. These are all tips for surviving the spot market and low demand. These are things that I've done repeatedly over and over and over throughout the years. Multiple trailers. If you have your authority, one multiple trailer, and what I'm talking about this is being able to go to, when you go to use DAT or the load board that you choose, when you go to post your truck, when I post my truck in Lexington, Kentucky, I'm posting myself dry van, but I'm also posting myself power only. That's free. That's free. It's a free, you know, if someone calls up and they want to negotiate with me about doing a power only, then I'm using their trailer. I just keep my trailer where it's at and go run their trailer. So you gotta have a place for your own trailer. Multiple trailers. I mentioned flatbed earlier. I've always had this desire to go buy a flatbed, but the reason why I've never bought the flatbed trailer, it is more work. But there's good money in flatbed some years, and especially during this time of the year. Some of those seasonal loads definitely pick up during this time of year for flatbed. Tell a real quick one. I hope my friend doesn't get mad about telling this story. But my friend, she bought a really, and it was one of those moving trailers. I think it's a Kentucky trailer, one of those moving that you see moving furniture type trailers. And I think she paid $7,000 or $8,000 for this trailer, and it was old. It had those old, ugly-looking wheels on it, rusty. You know, it was all rusted and everything. But those Kentucky trailers, those moving van trailers, they're built strong, they're built heavy duty, so they last. You know, if you update it. And the secret about that trailer is it had a lift gate. And I'm like, why would you spend that money on such a goofy looking trailer that it's not 53? No broker's ever going to want to use it. She wanted it. She got it. She got the lift gate fixed for $500. Spray painted the rust, and that trailer paid for itself within 1 month. I think she told me within the first couple of loads she did with it. Now, what's the key? The thing that I want you to remember from that liftgate trailer, is once she found a few brokers that needed liftgate trailer, that needed that liftgate capability, those same brokers now, this is several years later, 3 or 4 years later, those same brokers continually call her every time they have a load for a liftgate trailer. And it pays a lot more than just a regular van because nobody has a liftgate trailer. You would never think that. So within just think $7,000 or $8,000 through put maybe $1,000 more into it to fix it up. And she says she will not get rid of that liftgate trailer because she's got so much consistent freight from brokers calling her, asking her, and all that is round trip rates. You can quote because you're the only one with it. How many people you know with a liftgate trailer? Not very many. And when you're the only person in town that's got one, the brokers are going to remember that. They're not going to use anybody else. They're going to go to you and you only. So it's just another way to hedge during these bad times. If I always want to be a part of the freight that pays the best. That's the reason why I think about multiple trailers. If I just have a van and I'm always looking out for the highest paying van rate all the time, that's it's hard because you're competing with all the other people with the van. Anyway, multiple trailers, I love the idea, I love talking about it. Repeat work with the same customers is kind of like what I was saying about the lady with the liftgate trailer. A tip here is to use 3 times, work with the same broker. If you can pull 3 consecutive, I've talked about this in the past, and it does work. Talk about building relationships with brokers. A lot of people say, well, how do you build a relationship with a broker? Because everybody says, that's the key to getting better rates is build a relationship with a broker. If you can pull 3 loads consecutively or within a short amount of time, 3 loads with the same broker, you've built a relationship. And the best part about that, about working with the same broker, I would say 70% of your time calling a broker, talking to a broker, and that conversation with the broker, 70% of that time, you're trying to determine whether you can work with that broker or not, and whether the shipper, the cargo, whether and what the broker has, whether that's going to work for you or not. My guess is it's at least 70%. The other 30% is just coming down to the rate. That's the easy part, is coming down to a rate. The 70% part of it is figuring out whether you can work for the broker. Once you've done that, you've had success with that broker, you know who the broker is, go back to that same broker, use them again. That's 2 times. We're going for a third one. The third one, now you got a relationship. The broker is not even posting their freight to everybody. They want you. They want to go back to the same person they've used before. The relationship is established. Now, get some good relationships like that and repeat business with those same ones. They're giving you their best. They have very particular shippers that they only trust with their best carriers. That's what I'm talking about, using those same repeat customers and brokers. I'll talk about working with brokers all the time because it's rare that I ever mess with direct shippers. I think, probably say 98% of my freight has always been from brokers. If you can afford it, take more time off and run local. A story to go along with this is I told my friend a long time ago that once I got my house paid off, I'm done running and staying gone for 2 to 3 weeks at a time. I'm going to run local. Once I got the house paid off, I felt like that would be a burden. I don't care if I make a whole lot of money. I'm going to run local. Well, the great thing that came from that was going back home, running local. Lexington, Kentucky is where I live at. Was I started working with the same brokers, the same shippers, the same receivers, going to the same places. And because I had the house paid off, I didn't feel like I needed to make $9,000 a week, $8,000 a week. I didn't need to go and hit those home runs all the time. I got to stay at home and tell the broker, this is what my rate is. I know demand. I know that you have plenty of options. This is what it is. And I post my truck. The broker would call. Okay, I'm charging round trip rates to take it or leave it. I don't really want to get too far from Lexington because I'm not going to be able to get back. And well, we can't pay the round trip rates. We can't do that. We can't pay for you to come back. Okay, but this is my rate. If you take it or leave it, call me back. I'll still be here at 3 o'clock most likely. I know brokers ain't going to use me. But the best thing about doing that and being really strict about quoting those type of rates and sticking to it was so often those brokers would call 3 o'clock and give me those loads. So it works. And if you don't try it, you won't know it. And taking time off. I mean, remember that chart I showed you? Whenever rates were really high, that was the time to get it and stay at it. When it starts to slow down, take care of yourself. Okay, you've made your good money. Take some time off, start running local. Don't work as nearly as hard. The rates will come back, and just like I said, right after Matt's, you'll start seeing it tick back up. Well, that's the time to get back at it. When it was really cold, after January, February, that would have been a perfect time to take off. So taking time off, there's no problem with that because when you want to save yourself and be able to work really, get at it hard whenever those rates do come back. Quote the ugly load, 1585. I love this. I love telling this one. I've told it many times. Quoting the ugly load. Actually, if you Google it, you'll probably find a blog that I've written with DAT about quoting the ugly load. The way I hope this doesn't get too complicated. The way I came up with 1585, we'll call it 1600, was 13 years ago when I got started. I used to say, well, I need over the weekend in order to be running. I need at least 800 miles. If I'm going to stay out over the weekend, I need to find a run that's 800 miles. And at that time, everything to me, the goal was to average $2 per mile. Ain't it crazy? 13 years later, we're still trying to get $2 per mile. But back then, that's the rate, and that was about the average, a little bit higher than average, but that was the average that I tried to shoot for all the time was $2 per mile. So what I really wanted back then was $1,600. I really didn't care that it was, oh my gosh, 5 minutes. All right. I'm going to make this fast, but okay, what I really wanted at that time was 1,600, and I really didn't care what as long as the miles were less. So I would I would shoot out. So when a broker would call me about a run over the weekend, I would often quote 1585. That I would just shoot 1585. 1585 sounds like you really put thought into it instead of saying 1600. And the broker would be like, "How'd you come up with that number?" It's not. That's what And I would make up some story. But so much often that I got 1585 that my wife started saying, "Why do you always quote these loads of 1585?" Because they give them to me. They give them to me, and we're talking about runs that would be 200 miles, but maybe picks up on a Friday and delivers a Monday. Well, I'm not using the truck. That's the kind of money I want to make over the weekend, and they'd give me $15.85. I'm going to speed it up here because I'm running out of time. Work when others are sleeping, doing the 3 o'clock hustle. That's another really cool blog to read about. Google it, 3 o'clock hustle, Chad Boblet. I wrote that a long time ago. I got a lot of people liked it when I wrote that one. But basically, if you're the last, this is better when demand starts picking up, but if you're the last truck at the truck stop, you're more likely to be able to quote your own rate around that 3 o'clock when all the other trucks are gone. You're the last one in. All right. Getting your authority, as I said earlier, that's one of my favorite subjects. The main question that pops up in our Facebook group all the time is, should you get your authority now or not? And the way I like to answer that is if I woke up tomorrow and the only thing I had was a shirt on my back and my CDL in my pocket, what would I do? I would do everything I can to get my first truck and get my authority. Even in this market, absolutely, with my knowledge, I know that I would be more successful getting my authority. If I was close to retirement, I would find someone that would give me the most freedom and maybe pay 18 to 20% to lease under their name. Consider your debt and your obligations. You never want to take on these responsibilities if you can't feed your children. That's the thing that I always want to make sure. There is danger in doing this. You might not make it. It's not made out for everyone. Maybe 90%, but not everyone. And if you have kids, that's what you need to be worried about the most. How much money should you have saved? I had zero. I had zero in the bank. I tell people all the time that if my truck didn't have a half a tank, I remember looking at the fuel gauge on the truck. I even verified by opening up the lid. Yeah, it's got a half tank of fuel in there. And I judged my first load based on how much fuel was in the tank. I had no money at all. So how much? The more money, if I had more money, I might have spent it more friggers, spent it without being conservative. I'm gonna go to the next one here. Working with brokers. Most brokers, a lot of people say, well, I'm afraid to get my authority because brokers are not going to work with you. Yes, most brokers will work with you on day one. Don't let nobody tell you that. You will get some pushback, but if you stay in a high demand area, brokers will work with you. I assure you that. Join my group and we'll teach you how to get around that. The name of the Facebook group is Rate for My Masters. Always make sure authenticate the call. Fraud is rampant right now. If you do work with the broker, just because they call you up and they tell you, I'm with C.H. Robinson, you need to verify by doing a second phone call authentication to call the broker to make sure. I'm running out of time. He's looking at me. Do a second phone call authentication to make sure the broker is who they say they are. Look at DAT, the directory that's on DAT, and call that number. Safer's another one, and say, hey, your broker just gave me this load. You're verifying. And I got the first people that gave me that advice was TQL, and it was the best advice, and it's so true. Do that too, phone call authentication. Acquiring about detention will give you all the information you need to know. What I mean by that is if the broker's willing to pay detention, they probably know that it's a good load. If they say, no, we can't pay detention on that, hey, you know something's up, right? And I'm going to get to my very last one. I'm going to wrap this up. Back. Companies I work with, the companies that I promote and work with, this is all the companies. I could definitely, the first one on the list is Triumph. My group is currently doing about $280,000 per day, 5 days a week with this company, and it's rare we ever have a problem that ever comes up. And when we do have a problem, it never goes past that lady right there. Please stand up, Nicole, real quick. If you want to talk about Triumph and know who our agent is, some of you might already be using her, talk to her. She's here. She came all the way from, where y'all? Alabama, right? Dallas, that's right, Dallas. I'm headed there, actually, to see them in a couple weeks. Great person, that's Nicole, and definitely talk to her if you're thinking about factoring. There is no other better company. And the next person I want to get to is Reliance Partners. I get repeated, this is the insurance company that I send people to, and after I send people to Reliance, actually I send them to Natalia. Please stand up, Natalia. Is this lady right here, and this is our insurance agent, Natalia from Reliance Partners. I get repeated stories all the time about how they get, what I like about Natalia so much is her experience. She's been doing this a really long time, same with Nicole. And these people that get with Natalia, they always come back and respond, I'm saving an extra $1,000 this year, $2,000, $3,000. She did a fleet that's saving like a big, huge money. Mudflap, you got to have Mudflap in your wallet. A part of your fuel savings, if you want to save on fuel, use Mudflap. It's the easiest way to save on fuel. And Motive, ELD, I've been with them from the very beginning. And guess who most people use for ELD is Motive. DAT, I've been with them from the very beginning. I wouldn't have made it this far running the spot market if it wasn't for DAT. Highway is mostly for brokers, but watch out, they're coming in the future. They're going to be providing a service for us carriers to keep us safe. That's all I have.